Resources and the World Wildlife Fund for the capacity building and environmental management for the gold mining sector in Guyana. The lead agency in this initiative will be the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment, and the executing agency will be the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. Before we begin with today's remarks, I would like to invite Ms. Newton from WWF, who's the accounts manager, and the Honorable Minister for the handing over of the check for the sum of $12 million. Chief, I think the one who's up in front, please. I would like to now invite Dr. Patrick Williams, who's the head of the country manager of the WWF, to say a few brief remarks on the project.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, all members of the table, members of the press. It's with great pleasure that WWF has agreed to undertake this project with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment and the GGMC. Our collaboration with the GGMC has been going on for almost 10 years, and we have been very particular about the kinds of activities in which we've engaged. Mainly, we have been focusing on environmental management issues in the mining sector. For this project, there are three components. One component looks at training for miners and new entrants into the mining sector. The second component focuses on an attempt to upgrade the codes of practice in the mining sector. And the third component addresses the issues relating to the distribution of mercury within Guyana among different stakeholders. So those are the main areas in which this project will focus. The total amount for this project is $60,000 equivalent, and the project is expected to last for a period of 1 year. Let me also say that at this moment, WWF is also engaged with a number of stakeholders globally to examine issues relating to what is called the Minamata Treaty, which is basically an attempt to extend a global ban on the use of mercury. And WWF Guyana is quite interested in opening dialogue with the government and the responsible ministries as well to look at the possibility of being part of this process. I've put that on the table because I really would like the minister to give us a reaction to something like that, because it's an attempt that people are concerned about. Basically, we know about some of the negative effects on the use of mercury on the environment and on the human population, especially if care is not taken with the use of mercury. So with those few remarks, I would once again say thanks to the ministry for collaborating with us on this particular project, and I also would like to extend thanks to the staff members from the ministry who came over to WWF and worked very hard with us on the preparation and finalization of this project. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for those remarks, Dr. Williams. We extended it. Mr. Patrick Hardin, who's the president of the GGDMA, but unfortunately he's a bit ill today. But we have Mr. Wolford here today, who will be representing the GGDMA, and I'd now like to invite him to say a few brief remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, members of the media. The GGDMA welcomes this initiative, and we are looking for an outcome that would speak to efficient, effective management of the mining sector, utilizes sustainable principles and ethics, because we believe that the mandate of the miners is to mine, develop the country through mining, and part of what we expect would be land disturbance, and we want to make sure that that land disturbance does not lead to degradation. So anything where the ministry, GGDMA, or any other relevant ministry comes alongside the miners to provide practical help and support, the GGDMA welcomes that. As you're aware, one of the aims and mottos of the GGDMA is mining with the environment in mind. And so we look forward to collaboration on on the matters that are mentioned with respect to new policies and changes to regulations, we would anticipate that the GGDMA would, as usual, be consulted in these matters. Once again, we give our wholehearted support.
Thank you for those remarks, Mr. Wilford. I would like now to invite the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources and Environment to make his remarks.
Oh, thank you very much, and morning everyone, and to our women, belated Happy Mother's Day. Those who are mothers, and those who intend to be mothers. First of all, let me thank Dr. Williams and his team at WWF, and I must say, working with the WWF has always been not only a pleasure, but in which we've seen progress and development on many fronts. And my personal interaction with WWF goes back to since 2006 in my capacity as Minister responsible for forestry too. And I've seen even the transition in the ministry and creating and looking at different programs and initiatives. And the support of the WWF has always been forthcoming. And I want to publicly express that. The issue at hand certainly is very critical in terms of how do we better manage the environmental issues associated with the mining sector, and particularly looking at the subject of the use of mercury. A second area also in terms of human resources development, skills development that is so necessary, and how it is, can we update our codes of practices and guidelines so that we can bring about much more sustainable mining. And it is a focus and a direction that we're heading in, and that's the policy direction that has been both discussed, all stakeholders, including the GGDMA, but also through the ministry and our agency, the GGMC. We have been insisting that we constantly review, we constantly update, and we constantly engage all stakeholders at the end of the day to better and improve the mining sector. We don't want a situation where it is when we talk about mining, it conjures up images of destruction and bad practices. Rather, learning from our experiences here in Guyana, as well as elsewhere, and partnering with reputable bodies that have always worked as a friend of the environment, such as the WWF, certainly it would allow us to improve and to enhance what it is we do in mining, and at the end of the day continue to make this sector a very important sector in terms of contributing to national development and growth. But we all recognize that we have to do a better job, and it is as a result of this recognition, the constant dialogue with the GGDMA and other bodies, internal, external, and the constant approaches to agencies such as the WWF will, I think, at the end of the day, make us address some of those weaknesses, some of those areas that need urgent address. As you know, we've started a number of, started a number of initiatives to address or to realize our objective of bettering the mining sector. We recognize that human resources development is key, and the work in developing the Guyana Mining School has been ongoing, and we're happy that this program will also support this initiative in developing the curriculum and allowing us to deliver the program to miners and those who want to be miners, and ensuring that we have the right type of practices. And a number of external entities are also working with us, so this will support and supplement what it is we're doing. The issue of mercury and how it is, do we minimize its use and ensuring its safe use in mercury. And to address Dr. Williams' standpoint, at this point in time, our position working with other stakeholders is that we are working towards a gradual reduction in the use of mercury and presence in the mining sector. We don't believe that we can afford to have an immediate and total ban. It is important, particularly when we look at alluvial mining, but we believe and we've seen that we can do it in a very safe and environmentally friendly way. And in our interaction at UNEP, at the various meetings and heading into Japan, our position, and this has been supported, and the Commissioner has, with others, have been engaging the international agencies in terms of ensuring that we develop a program whereby in its gradual reduction, and we've set some timeline, that we can have capacity in Guyana in terms of looking at new technologies, mercury-free technologies, as we started. Look in terms of looking at our codes of practices, how it is, whilst we're using it, we ensure that we have the necessary codes of practices, we train, our people out there in terms of using the retarders and so forth, and how do we manage it. There has to be and there will be a complete program, and the resources coming here will support us in developing that national action plan. Multi-stakeholder working group has commenced work in developing this action plan and will ensure its implementation. So this support here is certainly significant. It will aid to us bettering the management of the mining sector. We will continue to address the weaknesses and the shortcomings within the GGMC itself too. And every single conversation I have with the chairman and the commissioners about how it is we can better the performance of the GGMC, ensuring that our staff are fully resourced, trained, and also have the will and the sustained commitment in addressing those shortcomings. And certainly through this program it will augment and assist us in this direction. So again, I want to thank the WWF, and I want to publicly ask former commissioner, now wearing another hat, Happy, that he can also take his wisdom and knowledge in terms of with other stakeholders. Please convey our sentiments of good health to the President and wish him an early recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to the Honorable Minister. I'd like to invite the media to ask any questions that they may have.
Chad Ramstroke, Nightly News. Minister, with regards to the phasing out of mercury, what timeline are we looking at?
We have discussed a number of timelines on the table, but we believe a very realistic timeline for us would be 10 years, and I think that was accepted by the Latin American and Caribbean grouping at the meeting that was held in Colombia recently.
And with regard to the international trading, is Guyana finding difficulty in sourcing the commodity?
Put it this way, there are some countries that have put the total ban in terms of its use, and there are other countries and other producers who continue to trade. So it is not one of illegality in the part of the mining sector being able to acquire the material as such, because it is still legally tradable in some jurisdiction.
I know the trading is a private sector arrangement. Can you say the source?
Online or go somewhere and pick up the flask of mercury and turn up in Guyana with it, and it's there. There is a process, there's a mechanism that involves the Ministry of Health, Poison Board, that involves the Chemical and Pesticides and Toxic Board that we have. So there's a mechanism that has to be followed. So it's not one in which it's a substance that is, you can walk off the shelf anywhere and turn up in Guyana with it. There's a process and there are requirements that has to be satisfied. There are a number of jurisdictions, China, out of Spain, Malaysia too, we've had some. So there have been a number of jurisdictions in this regard.
Could I ask Mr. Wilford? Mr. Wilford, you represented GGDA. How receptive are your members to this initiative, and how quickly are they trying to comply given the minister's time, given the 10-year limit? How far have they gone in terms of large-scale mining to work towards mercury-free mining for smaller people? Is that 10-year at all realistic for them?
We'll have to study it at the association, but it sounds reasonable, provided that the Ministry and the Guyana Geological Mines Commission can work with the miners in the field, on the ground, with the new equipment. Because what we would anticipate is that the miners would have to be convinced that the new equipment takes them to a higher level of productivity, rather than the new equipment would hinder their operation. So one would anticipate that as part of that 10-year process, there would be strong training and education of the miners in the field with the new equipment.
Would that be a responsibility of your ministry to do the training and awareness programs for the minors?
It has to be a multi-stakeholder approach. We've set the policy. We're engaging international partners as we're doing here today in terms of looking at resources, looking in terms of capability. But I see this as being a unified effort and not the responsibility of one stakeholder or the other. And that is why in the working group and the commitment and the outlook to reinforce what Mr. Woodford has said too, is that it has to be done in partnership. And that is why we've started to provide incentives for mercury-free technology. That's why we've seen miners themselves are moving into that direction, because some of the studies done and the track record of some of the equipment that are being brought in have looked at recovery in the 90% or thereabout. So the miners too have seen the wisdom in moving away from mercury. But we have to do the training, we have to look at technology transfer, we have to look at the issues of making it available. We've even explored the idea of both the government and the Miners Association setting up what we can call a revolving fund, whereby persons can be able to access financing so that they can look at these new technologies and so forth, especially targeting the small miners in this regard. So there are a number of initiatives that we're pursuing, but it has to be coordinated, and the approach that we've taken is that we want to do this together. We want to do this together and not to be in a situation where the role of government or the regulator is to set the policy, step back and see what happens, and if you fail to adhere, we just come after you. No, it's not only that. We will if people are in the breach, but it is also about giving support, constant education, and also ensuring that we understand all the issues at hand, and we do that in a very unified way.
Minister, is the government looking at incentives for miners to practice mercury-free mining?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We have looked at a number of options, and we will continue to.
I'm trying to understand here. Have you looked at the cost-effective transition from mercury to non-mercury, how it's going to impact the pockets of the average miner? Because at the end of the day, they want to make a profit. What is being put into place to compare mining with mercury to these new technologies, because they're expensive, and if concessions will be given to the miners who opt for mercury-free mining?
One, we cannot discount the economics of the transition, and that is why we've set a time frame that will allow us to deal with some issues. That is why we are reaching out to a number of external as well as internal groupings, so that we can adequately prepare, study the issues, and how do we mitigate some of those factors that you've raised in this regard. So it is not doing this blindly, and this program will also seek to address some of those core issues that you've had. The working group that has started its work will be looking also at the issues of economic, and we will be relying also on UNEP for their support in terms of providing us with some of the, not answers alone, but also with some of the facilities that will allow our sector to transition. So we intend to do it in a very complete as well as in a smart way. I'm sure, Victoria, you want to add?
Yes, one of the ways in which we try to deal with these issues is to reprocess the waste that comes out of the current system. And in this, we can actually show them what is lost, what they're losing by using the method they're using. So if they see what they're losing is substantial, then they would opt to go for mercury-free.
But as a follow-up to the question, I would want to point out that what the miners currently use is readily available in Guyana school spots.
Yes.
No other equipment is readily available. Part of the process would have to be not just education and training, but to make that equipment readily available. And I suspect this is where the revolving fund comes in. But I also suspect that the Guyana Geological Mines Commission will have to own some of the equipment and provide hands-on for miners to learn how to use it. Because the equipment is a little more complicated than the school spots.
I think we have already acquired some of those equipment. Within the next 2 weeks, the mineral processing team will be out in the fields, working in collaboration with the GGDME to field test first, ensure that it works, and then demonstrate.
Minister, can you provide an update on goal declarations so far with this year?
Well, at the end of last week, what we saw was in the vicinity of about 12% increase in terms of declaration compared with the corresponding period last year. I'm not giving numbers out, I'm just giving a percentage out. And because of some trading issues we have with the pricing and so forth, I'll be better advised by the chairman and his team at the Guyana Gold Board in terms of how much those numbers and how many ounces we want to see we have with Brunel. So don't ask me the next question. So you wouldn't get that. That's, for the time being, it's information for trading purposes. But just to say that we have seen an increase in declaration between 10 or 12%. Yeah.
And that was on target?
It's on target. On target. It's on target.
Good, Larry Kensman. So you talk about the code of practice. What exactly are you looking to change? And if you talk about code of practice, you also talk about enforcement. Are we also looking at that area?
Well, it is updating. There's an update. There's a one that is currently being utilized. There's existence needs updating. We need to ensure that we take into account some of the new developments that have happened. And yes, once you've agreed on a code of practice, that enforcement is very important. That certainly will be an issue that the GGMC will continue to give much attention, but also we want to do this with the other stakeholders.
It's covered under the Mining Act and regulations.
No, you're talking about the GGDMA, the membership.
Public registration.
The membership, whether you cover all the members, all the miners.
No. The GGDMA would not. We tend to cover all of them.
Price, gold prices.
Well, we continue to monitor. It's wavering in the above 1400, but certainly it has not reached one in which we can say we're in a crisis or in a great state of alarm. But I'm quite sure miners, producers, exporters, everyone, government, we are looking at the price situation closely, and certainly, as we said at the last meeting when we discussed this issue, when there was the sudden drop, we all need to look at our operations in terms of looking at cost. We all need to look long term in terms of diversification, in terms of our mineral portfolio. And I also, it's an issue that requires much attention at the Guyana Gold Board itself, from the trading standpoint, to minimize our exposure in this regard. So it's an issue that continues to have attention.
May I just respond to this, follow up to the code of practice? I'm thinking that you need to recognize that codes of practice are standard operating procedures. And the whole intent is that the environmental regulations for mining at this point require that about a dozen codes of practice be put in operation. And that, I think, is what we're talking about. But the standard operating practice will help the miner achieve compliance with the regulations. So once you get those standard operating practices set out, then you work with the miner, a little handbook, you work with the miner on implementing those standard operating practices. So you have all of them reaching the level of skill and ability.
All right, I think we can
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
wrap this up.